We made our way down the path towards the music shop yet again, with William kicking a stone as he walked, annoying the ever-loving hell out of me. Haven't grown out of that habit yet, I see, I quipped as I watched William retrace his steps every time he missed the stone with his foot, and then continue once the stone was back on track. I'm going to be a soccer star one day, and I'm going to tell my security guards to keep your name on the weirdo list. William replied, still kicking the stone, only stopping when the stone bounced off the back of my shoe after he had missed the kick. Yeah, watch out, Cristiano Ronaldo, I scoffed, as William bent down and picked up the stone that he had been kicking. Your foot was in the way, not my problem, William replied, as he walked up in front of me, causing me to stop in my tracks, and gently shook the stone in my face. Move your hand before you lose it. You're lucky I didn't step on this stupid stone and break my ankle, I tisked annoyingly, and pushed his hand out of my face. I think you've already stepped on the stupid stone. William had mumbled it under his breath, and began to walk ahead, hoping that I hadn't heard it, but I jumped forward and grabbed the collar of his shirt, ready to pull him into a chokehold when I froze in my spot. Just ahead of us, on the concrete, was a pair of feet clad in casual brown loafers. Gonna have to agree with the lady on this one. Gotta work on your aim, dude. Both William's head and mine spun at the sudden spoken words. On the sidewalk, just a few feet from us, was Jacob, standing with his hands in his pockets and leaning against the lone red post box just outside the music shop. And who the hell are you? William stepped forward as he attempted to assert his dominance. I almost laughed at William trying to be a tough guy, then quickly stood between the two men to defuse the situation. William, this is Jacob Ivanov. From the music shop? Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton's friend? William's face softened as Jacob gently pushed himself off of the post box and extended his hand for William to take. Jacob Ivanov. Charmed, I'm sure. William Restwell. William gave Jacob a tight-lipped smile as he clasped his hand in Jacob's and gave it a couple shakes before stepping back and sliding his hands into his pant pockets diffidently. I take it you're also a Restwell then? Jacob said as he pointed a finger at me. I guess the jig's up, I joked. Jacob let out a slightly condescending chuckle, allowing his eyes to roam the bustling street to our right before looking over at us. You spoke to Mr. Hamilton about playing for the Wake? William piped in, cutting right to the chase. I squeezed my eyes shut in embarrassment. Professional, yet unequivocally impassive. Yeah, decided to do it, Jacob replied, with an annoying ease. William's eyes met mine, and I could practically see the question marks forming around his head. Jacob, Mr. Ivanov. I started to ask Jacob about the situation before he cut me off. Jacob is fine. Mr. Ivanov is my dad, Jacob stated as his face twisted in a grimace. I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Be professional. Jacob, I said pointedly. Carry on, Jacob said, with a wave of his hand. I stole a glance at William, who was watching our exchange with furrowed eyebrows, and then looked back at Jacob. Mr. Hamilton contacted us to let us know that you would be playing at Ainsley's service. What changed your mind? I questioned. He asked nicely, Jacob teased, as he crossed his arms against his chest. Mr. Ivanov, we would appreciate it if you stopped joking around and answered our questions, William suddenly said, seemingly having had enough of Jacob's flippant attitude. I stepped forward and clutched William's wrist in utter disbelief and pulled him to the side. You can't speak to people like that, I whispered angrily. William pulled his wrist out of my grasp and looked over my shoulder at Jacob. Well, he's being an idiot, William shouted, purposefully wanting Jacob to hear what he had said. William Restwell, I exclaimed in shock, and turned around to Jacob, ready to apologize, only to see Jacob smiling at the two of us. Don't stop on my behalf. I'm just wondering who the older sibling is. Jacob watched us fighting with clear amusement evident on his face, as William stepped away from me and faced Jacob. I'm clearly the older sibling here. What part of this makes you think otherwise? William gestured between the two of us, still standing on the sidewalk. Only by 5 minutes, I mumbled under my breath, and then cleared my throat before addressing Jacob. Why don't we finish this conversation inside? I said, as I nodded in the direction of the music shop behind Jacob. Sure, Jacob replied, as he turned and walked inside the music shop. William waited a while before following him in. I sighed as I walked in behind William and joined the two boys at the drum set that I had knocked over earlier, and looked around for Jacob's father, Nicholas Ivanov. My dad's gone to his book club meeting, Jacob said, almost as if he has read my mind. I heard William scoff before he cleared his throat. So, Jacob, what made you decide to play at the service? William asked with forced politeness. Jacob's eyes flickered to mine for a second before he looked back at William. Matt called and asked me to do it, so I said yes, Jacob said. What, that's it? William asked confusedly. Jacob just nodded in response. Okay, well, noted. William clapped his hands together as he spoke, seemingly ending the conversation there. Before I could even say anything to Jacob, William turned to face me and grabbed my right shoulder as he stepped backwards, effectively spinning me around in the process. "Rose and I will see you at Ainsley's service then," William stated, as he all but pulled me to the exit of the shop, my feet stomping against the ground at the sudden movement. When we were back on the sidewalk, I shoved William's hand off of my shoulder and stood back to look at him. "What was that?" I exclaimed at William's actions in the music shop. "Guy's a weirdo. I'm going to do a background check on him," William said as he continued walking toward the funeral home. "Why?" I asked seriously as I followed William. William huffed before answering. "Doesn't pass my vibe check." "That doesn't mean he's a bad guy. Plus that means nothing. No one passes your vibe check but me," I replied incredulously. "Barely," I heard William scoff as we arrived at the funeral home, and I unlocked the front door, but not before giving him a good whack upside the head and then running inside. "Ow!" William yelled and began chasing me as I sped past him into the reception area and through to my office, locking the door behind me. "Rose Restwell, if I get this door open, you'll be our next customer," William yelled as he hit what I guessed was his fist against the door. I let out a loud guffaw and stood against the door for a while, breathing deep after my desperate run to get inside before William. My chest rose and fell with each inhale and exhale, and I subconsciously noted that I hadn't run far enough to cause this much breathlessness. But I passed it off as excitement and reached down to open the door for William. All of a sudden, I felt a tightness in my chest, and it became harder to breathe as I coughed repeatedly and tried to breathe in more air. "Rose?" William called from the other side of the door, but I wasn't able to answer him as I slid to the floor with a thud and leant against the door, still trying desperately to breathe normally. My breath came out in wheezes, and I frantically clutched at my neck as William's banging on the door became more urgent as he realized that I could be in trouble. "Rose!" That's weird. Why does William sound so far away now? I felt my arm fall to the floor, and my vision went black, as if someone had shut off all the lights in the room. William had stopped banging against the door a long time ago. "Rosie, up, time for school." My eyes snapped open, and I blinked a couple times as the cracks in the ceiling above me came into focus. I sat up and rubbed my eyes as I willed them not to close again, then threw my blanket off and swung my legs around as I sat on the edge of the bed for a while, before standing up and walking toward the bathroom to wash up. "Hurry up, breakfast is getting cold," I heard Mum yell up the stairs as I brushed my teeth, and I quickly rinsed out my mouth and washed my face, grabbing a towel as I made my way down the stairs and to the kitchen. "What did you make, Mum?" I asked as I reached the bottom of the stairs and made my way to the kitchen, still drying my face with a towel. When I reached the kitchen, I removed the towel from my face and was met with silence and an eerie emptiness, and I suddenly remembered. I graduated high school 13 years ago. "Mum?" I walked up to the kitchen bench that sat in the middle of the kitchen and realized that it was void of any utensils and ingredients for breakfast. But I had definitely heard Mum calling from here. From where I stood, I could see into the living room area and noticed that there was a faint glow emanating from an unknown source. I also realized that it was now dark outside, but for some reason, the sudden change in the outside world didn't worry me at all. As I closed the distance between the kitchen and the living room, I noticed that the faint glow was coming from the TV that had been turned on and forgotten, it seemed. "Mum? Dad? William?" I called out, but was answered by a perturbing silence, only broken by the hushed mumblings of the TV. Walking into the living room, I approached the TV and reached out a hand to switch it off, plunging the room into darkness and absolute silence. "Oh, for God's sake," I whispered to myself as I fumbled around the room, trying to find a wall or the couch to lead myself to the light switch. My fingers found the end of the couch that was closer to the light switch, and I sighed in relief as I trailed my hand along the seat cushions and up, approaching the armrest as I stepped towards the light switch that, thanks to finding the couch, I now knew was in front of me and slightly to the left. I stopped short as I realized that the seat underneath my hand was cold and wet, and I pressed my fingers into the fabric of the couch, then brought my hand up and rubbed the tips of my fingers together. There was definitely something on them. I disregarded the subtest on my fingers for now, and pushed away from the couch as my eyes had somewhat adjusted to the darkness, and walked the rest of the way to the light switch. Using my other hand, I flipped the light on, only to wish that I hadn't. Turning around, I suddenly realized that I was not alone in the room. On the couch were Mum and Dad, resting against the cushions behind them with their eyes closed, and my eyebrows furrowed in confusion, wondering why they hadn't heard me calling for them from the kitchen, if they were just in the next room. I went to take a step forward and let out a scream as I fully took the scene in front of me. Dad's head was slumped back, his face angled upward towards the ceiling, and his left hand was lowered to the side, barely clutching a bottle of something that I couldn't see from where I was standing. Mum was in a similar position, Her head drooped to the side, her cheek resting on her right shoulder, and her left hand was placed atop an empty glass that lay in her lap, which had rolled onto its side. Both Mum and Dad had a clear substance that had run down the side of their mouth, past their chin, and onto the couch, which I realized must have been a substance that I've touched. I fell back onto the carpet, gasping and wheezing, trying to comprehend what I was looking at. My breath came in short wheezes as I felt my chest tighten, and the room in front of me blinked in and out of darkness. My head hit the floor, and I let out a final gasp as I welcomed the disconnect and murky blackness behind my closed eyes.